Hello, good morning students. So we were discussing about distance from two camps. That means India followed a policy of non-alignment or India didn't join either the side of US or the side of the USSR. Okay, so India followed the policy of non-alignment by reducing the Cold War tensions. So India could reduce the Cold War tensions and it contributed human resources to the UN peacekeeping operations. So India didn't join either of the two camps. Why? India didn't join NATO and Warsaw Pact. According to India, the ideal form of foreign policy or ideal foreign policy approach was the non-alignment. Okay, but sometimes there were some difficulties in balancing this relationship, balancing this non-alignment policy. So, what were the examples that we studied last class? So, when there was USSR's invasion on Hungary, India didn't condemn that attack. Why? We already studied that India was in support of USSR, or India was slightly slanted towards the USSR because of the socialist ideologies. Nehru was more attached to the USSR. And when Britain attacked Egypt over the Suez Canal issue, India led the world protest against neo-colonial invasion. So from these two examples, we can say that India couldn't maintain that balance. Sometimes it showed more support to the military alliance followed by the USSR. But still, India took independent stand on international issues. They got aid and resistance from members of both the blocs that we studied in the first chapter in the Cold War. Whenever we wanted help, we got it from either from the US or from the USSR. Okay. Then what was the policy of other countries towards India's non-alignment? Or what was the approach of other countries? So, Pakistan was also a developing country like India, but they also got independence when we got, but they joined the US-led military alliance. Okay, Pakistan didn't follow the non-alignment policy initiated by India and some other countries. So, Pakistan joined the US-led military alliance. Then what about the US? The US was also not happy towards India's independent initiatives and policy of non-alignment. So, the US was not happy towards India's independent policy of non-alignment or India's independent initiatives and policy of non-alignment. So the US resented India's growing partnership with USSR, and US didn't like the partnership, the growing partnership with the USSR. Okay. So Pakistan didn't join, even though it was a developing country. Pakistan didn't join the non-alignment of India. Pakistan joined the US-led military alliance. Then US was not happy towards India's independent initiatives and the policy of non-alignment. Then the US resented India's growing partnership with the USSR. Okay. So, in the chapter Planned Development, we studied that what was the development strategy of India in 1950s. We wanted to develop the domestic industries, the Indian industries. Okay. So, we followed a policy of import substitution. So, in 1950s, India followed a policy of import substitution. That means replacing foreign imports with domestic production. So, because of this policy of import substitution, there was not much economic interaction with the outside world. For India, there was not much economic interaction with the outer world. Okay. So, immediately after independence or in 1950s, the development strategy of India limited India's economic interaction with the outside world, because for the promotion of domestic industries, India followed a policy of import substitution. Policy of import substitution. That means replacing foreign imports with domestic production. Clear? We already studied this. Okay. So, the development strategy of India in 1950s limited India's economic interaction with the outside world, because for the promotion of Indian industries or domestic industries, India followed a policy of import substitution. That means replacing foreign imports with domestic production. Okay. Then Afro-Asian unity. Afro-Asian unity. So, Nehru envisaged a major role for India in world affairs, especially in Asian affairs. Okay. So, he thought that India is too large, okay, and we have human resources and very good location. So, because of all these factors, Nehru envisaged a major role for India, where in world affairs, especially in Asian affairs. And he had, or India had, contacts with newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. Nehru had, or the Indian leaders had, contacts with the newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. We already studied that it was a period of decolonization. And in 1940s and 1950s, he was an ardent advocate of Asian unity. Nehru was a strong supporter, a strong advocate of Asian unity. He wanted the unity of all Asian countries. Okay. So, Nehru envisaged a major role for India in world affairs, especially in Asian affairs. And Nehru or the Indian leaders had contacts with newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. Then 40s and 50s, during this period, Nehru was a strong advocate of Asian unity. So, for the unification or for the unity, for the cooperation of Asian countries, India convened Asian Relations Conference. Very important question, this Afro-Asian Unity, Asian Relations Conference in March 1947 in New Delhi. Okay, so in India convened Asian Relations Conference in March 1947. And to support Indonesia's freedom struggle against the Dutch colonial regime, India convened another international conference in 1949, and in this conference 19 nations participated. Okay. So, first one, Asian Relations Conference. It was convened at New Delhi in 1947. So, it was for the unity of Asian countries. And one thing you have to listen, it is before our independence. Okay, we got independence in August, in the month of August. So, even before that, Nehru was trying for the cooperation or unity of Asian countries. Okay. So, in March 1947, Asian Relations Conference was convened at New Delhi. Then there was a freedom struggle in Indonesia. Freedom struggle in Indonesia against the Dutch colonial rule. So, to support Indonesia's freedom struggle, India convened another conference, international conference. It was also convened at New Delhi. Okay. That was also convened at New Delhi. It is given here. New Delhi in the year 1949, and 19 nations participated in that conference. Okay. So, first one, Asian Relations Conference, then International Conference of 1949. Asian Relations Conference of 1947, International Conference of 1949. So, India was a strong supporter of decolonization process, and India opposed racism. Then, especially apartheid in South Africa. So, India was also a colonized country. We were also under the colonial rule. So, naturally, India was a supporter of decolonization process. And India opposed racism, that racial discrimination, to which many colonies or the colonial people were subjected to this racism of the Europeans. And India was against the apartheid in South Africa. Then you already studied about the Bantam Conference. Bantam Conference of April 1955. April 1955. So it was the first large-scale Afro-Asian conference. So in the beginning I told that Afro-Asian unity, our subtitle Afro-Asian unity. So Nehru or India wanted the cooperation of Asian and African countries. So Bandung Conference was held in 1955 in the Indonesian city of Bandung. Okay, Indonesian city of Bandung in the year 1955, and it was the first large-scale Afro-Asian conference. And 29 nations participated in this conference. 29 nations. So the Bandung Conference showed the zenith of India's engagement with newly independent Asian and African nations. Okay, so India was engaged with the newly independent Asian and African countries. So when the Bandung Conference was held, India was at the zenith of these engagements. Okay, so Bandung Conference was held in April 1955. It was the first large-scale Afro-Asian conference. So how many nations participated? 29 nations participated in this conference. Okay, most of these countries were the newly independent Asian and African countries. Then the Bandung Conference of 1955 led to the formation of non-aligned movement of 1961. Okay, so Bandung Conference paved the way for non-aligned movement of 1961. So you already studied about the non-aligned movement in the first chapter. So who were the leaders? The 5 nations were there behind this non-aligned movement. Okay, so which were the nations? India, then Yugoslavia, Egypt, Indonesia, Ghana. So both Asian and African countries were there. Then who were the leaders behind the movement? Nehru, Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Sukarno of Indonesia, then Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. And its first summit was held in Belgrade in the month of September 1961. So the first summit of NAM was at Belgrade, okay, in 1961. Okay, so the Bandung Conference of 1955 led to the formation of non-aligned movement of 1961. So 5 nations were behind the formation of non-aligned movement: India, Yugoslavia, Egypt, Indonesia and Ghana. So the leaders behind the movement were Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, Joseph Broz Tito, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Sukarno and Kwame Nkrumah. And its first summit was at Belgrade. Okay. So these points you already studied, but here if the question is asked for 8 marks, you can include these here. Okay. So the non-aligned movement was the culmination of at least 3 factors. So it was the culmination of at least 3 factors. Cooperation among these 5 nations, that India, Egypt, Yugoslavia, Indonesia and Ghana. So cooperation among these 5 nations, mention the 5 nations here. Then growing Cold War tensions and its widening arenas, then emergence of newly decolonized African countries in the international arena. Okay. In that chapter we studied the coming of African nations as new members of the UN. Remember? So, cooperation among these 5 nations, growing Cold War tensions and its widening arena, emergence of newly decolonized African countries in the international arena. So, NAM was the culmination of these 3 factors. So, once again, Afro-Asian unity. So, it's an important question. So, listen. Nehru envisaged a major role for India in world affairs, especially in Asian affairs. Then India had contacts with newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. Then in 1940s and 1950s, Nehru was a strong advocate of Asian unity. So, for the cooperation of Asian nations, India convened Asian Relations Conference in March 1947 at New Delhi. Then to support, second one, to support Indonesia's freedom struggle against the Dutch colonial regime, India convened an international conference at New Delhi in 1949. It was a 19-nation conference. Okay. Then India was a strong supporter of decolonization process and it opposed racism, especially apartheid in South Africa. Then Bantam Conference was held in April 1955. It was the first large-scale Afro-Asian conference of 29 nations, and this Bantam Conference showed the zenith of India's engagement with newly independent Asian and African nations. Then Bantam Conference led to the formation of NAM. So, that is 4th one. Okay. Asian Relations 1947, International Conference 1949, Bantam Conference 1955, then Non-Aligned Movement in 1961. Then here you have to take points from the first chapter. Cold War, there non-alignment is given, so you have to include that points. Then here you mention the leaders behind the non-aligned movement. Jawaharlal Nehru, Joseph Broz Tito, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Sukarno, Kwame Nkrumah. Then their countries: India, Yugoslavia, Egypt, Indonesia and Ghana. Then its first summit was held in September 1961 at Belgrade. Then NAM was the culmination of at least 3 factors: cooperation among these 5 nations, then growing Cold War tensions and its widening arenas, emergence of newly decolonized African countries in the international arena. Clear? Then now I am going to the next topic: peace and conflict with China. We already studied about some relations with China. Okay. So peace and conflict with China. So immediately after our independence or after the formation of Chinese Republic, we had very good relations, friendly relations with China. Friendly relations with China. And India was one of the first countries to recognize the communist government of China. Okay. So India was one of the first countries to recognize the communist government of China. So Nehru, as Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, he had good relations with China. But some leaders like Vallabhbhai Patel, spelling mistake is there, Vallabhbhai Patel was worried about the possible Chinese aggression. Okay. So leaders like Patel, Vallabhbhai Patel was worried about the possible Chinese aggression. But for Nehru, it was exceedingly unlikely. So he never thought of a Chinese aggression. Okay. Even in our borders, there was the army was not there to protect our borders during that time. There were paramilitary forces to protect the borders. Okay. Then on 29th April 1954, Panchsheel was signed. The 5 principles of peaceful coexistence between Nehru and the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. And these two leaders visited each other's country. Okay. So Nehru never thought of a Chinese aggression. Even in our borders, there were paramilitary forces to protect. Then Panchsheel was signed, an agreement signed between India and China. 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. It was in the year 1954. Who were the leaders who signed the Panchsheel? Nehru and the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. And these two leaders visited each other's country. So, which are the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence or Panchsheel of 1954? First one, mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Then mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, peaceful coexistence. So these are the 5 principles or the 5 principles included in the Panchsheel of 1954, the agreement signed between Nehru and Zhou Enlai, or the agreement signed between India and China in the year 1954. Very important. Panchsheel of 1954. Mutual respect, that 5 principles. Mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, then mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, then last, peaceful coexistence. So these are the pictures of Nehru and Zhou Enlai, very close friends. Then there is a box given in your text and it is titled Tibet. So we already studied about the issue of 1950s over Tibet in the alternative centers of power. So China claimed administrative control over Tibet, and in 1950 China took over Tibet. And you already studied that there was opposition among the Tibetans regarding this or against this occupation of China. And India also persuaded China to recognize the Tibetan claim for independence. That also we studied. India was not in support of this Chinese action. Even though there were friendly relations between India and China at that time, India was not in support of this occupation of Tibet by China. So China claimed administrative control over Tibet, and in 1950 China took over Tibet. The Tibetans protested against this, and India persuaded China to recognize the Tibetan claim for independence. So when the Panchashil was signed in 1954, we already studied all the clauses. One clause of Panchashil was respecting each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. So through this clause, India conceded or India agreed China's claim over Tibet. So in the beginning, India persuaded China to recognize the independence of Tibet, but later when India and China signed this Panchashil in 1954, through the clause of respecting each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, India agreed China's claim over Tibet. Then the Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama reached India in 1956. Actually, he accompanied Zhou Enlai, the Chinese premier, and when he reached India, he gave information about the worsening situation in Tibet. What was the policy of Chinese government there? Okay, so in 1956, when Dalai Lama, the Tibetan spiritual leader, accompanied Zhou Enlai, the Chinese premier, he explained all the worsening situation of Tibet at that time. So this is the picture of Zhou Enlai, Nehru and Dalai Lama. So China assured greater autonomy for Tibet. And in 1958, in Tibet, there was an armed uprising. Okay, there was an armed uprising in 1958. And this uprising was suppressed by the Chinese government. So this uprising was against the Chinese occupation of Tibet, and it was in 1958. But the uprising of Tibetans was suppressed by China. And in 1959, Dalai Lama sought asylum in India, in Dharmashala of Himachal. Okay, so in 1959, Dalai Lama sought asylum in India. So China has created the Tibet as an autonomous region. The Tibetans thought that the Chinese would undermine their traditional culture and religion. So they were not in support of this Chinese occupation. So what was the attitude of Tibetans? They thought that the Chinese would undermine the traditional culture and religion of Tibet. The present situation now, this Tibet is an autonomous region within China, and it is governed by a people's government led by a chairman. Then this chairman or the leader of that people's government is subordinate to the branch secretary of Chinese Communist Party. Okay, so now Tibet is an autonomous region within China governed by a people's government led by a chairman. This chairman is subordinate to the branch secretary of Chinese Communist Party. Clear? So today I am going to wind up. So tomorrow we can meet again. Okay? Bye bye. Take care.